When I was first asked to speak here at TEDx today, I was excited because of the ideas that I was exposed to from watching TED Talks myself. TED allows for a spreading of knowledge, the intermingling of ideas become viral, and communities are built on that proliferation of creativity. However, today I'd like to talk to you about a different type of spreading and exposure that has not had such benevolent effects. 6 years ago, I first met a person affected by the herbicide Agent Orange at a place called the Friendship Village outside of Hanoi, Vietnam. The sense of connection I felt with this man reverberated within me long after I left, but I didn't quite know why. I just knew that we both seemed to understand the repercussions of war. And this thought kept me up at night. The fact that we both seemed to inherit the war, but more, the fact that this herbicide, Agent Orange, is still affecting people today. Agent Orange is an herbicide that was sprayed in Vietnam from 1961 to 1971 by American soldiers. It is an herbicide containing the toxic chemical dioxin. Research estimates that approximately 4.5 million Vietnamese and hundreds of thousands of Americans were exposed when the chemical was first sprayed at 50 times the suggested concentration for defoliation. A lot of people think it's a problem of the past. However, even though the war was declared over in 1975, people are still today being born with physical and cognitive disabilities due to exposure to this chemical. Agent Orange has infiltrated the groundwater and bloodlines of communities in heavily sprayed areas. It is a lipophilic chemical that is passed on through generations. Parents who are exposed are passing on the effects to their children who were never directly exposed. Agent Orange, therefore, becomes a literal and physical example of how war is carried into the present. So the question I asked myself was, what can we do about it today? And many different organizations have begun to try and answer this question, including the US and Vietnamese governments, who've begun to work together to clean up the environment in Vietnam, as well as provide medical support to families with members affected by Agent Orange. And while these actions are extremely important and still need a lot of financial support, I realized that I had the opportunity to play a different role for communities affected by Agent Orange that had to do with this connection I originally felt 6 years ago. Part of it is that I'm a first-generation Vietnamese American who grew up right here in the Bay Area as a result of my parents leaving Vietnam. I listened to war stories around the dinner table. Another part of it is something that I feel like each and every one of us can tap into here today, and that idea is kinesthetic empathy. As an undergraduate here at Stanford, I studied this idea of kinesthetic empathy, which is the notion that shared movement provides the neural bases for empathy and compassion between people. Neuroscientist V.S. Ramachandran has previously spoken at TED about these mirror neurons and the way in which a certain neuron will be activated when I reach out like this, and also how that same neuron will be activated when I watch you reach out in a similar manner. Now, as a dancer and a choreographer, this made a lot of sense to me. I know that when I perform an action with another human being, there is a connection that is built. So I decided to put my studies into practice. I went from cognitive mapping to choreographing cartographies. I returned to Vietnam this past summer and led an activity I'm calling Mapping Your Life. It's an activity in which I ask each individual to spatially map out his or her biography in space in 5 minutes, birth to death in 5 minutes. Now, you can imagine that this was no easy feat, and most of the people in the room were looking at me just as you're looking at me right now in some mixture of fear and confusion. Because what does creating a map of your life even mean? It means locating home, a place to begin, and choreographing a journey through the major landmarks of your life. Maps can mean a lot of different things for different people, but for communities of refugees in particular, they can be a projection of our future dreams, as well as a document of where we've been. They can allow us to see things that we didn't know were there, or perhaps didn't have the time to see. So we started this mapping activity by doing something I'm calling mirroring, and we're gonna try that right now. So if you could turn to a partner next to you, you're gonna give that person a high five, say hello, introduce yourself. Great. Now, place your hand back about 1 inch away from their hand. Okay, now one person move and the other person try and follow along. Okay, good. Now switch. The other person lead and the other person follows. There's some intense action going on right over there. Good. Now try and do it together. See what it's like to lead and follow at the same time. What is it like to share that responsibility and leadership for your actions? Okay, good. Give that person another high five and thank them. Great. Thanks for playing along. So we started by doing this mapping activity by starting with this mirroring because we wanted to know what it was like to move with another human being in our body. But we didn't stop there. We wanted to go further, to know what it was like to literally, physiologically, in our bodies, take a walk in someone else's shoes. I was helping my team cross what I'm calling the sea of change. It's a move from sympathy for the other to empathy with another to action together. It is a move from measuring changes in the brain through cognitive mapping to using our bodies to physically enact that change. And something incredible happened when our team members began mapping their lives. It was the first time that several of our team members in wheelchairs literally hoisted themselves out of their seats and began dragging themselves through the rocky terrain of their past. I was surprised by the honesty and the earnestness with which these individuals shared his or her past challenges with us. And I'd like to share one participant's journey with you today. His name is Duong. So what you see is that Duong choreographs falling, not just once, but several times. You can feel the weight of its body as it hits the floor and the effort it takes for him to start again. But you'll see that he keeps getting up, and he keeps getting up, and he keeps getting up. And behind him, you'll see other members from our team mirroring his movements, just as you practiced a minute ago. But notice that their mirroring is not mimicry of his life, but rather an amplification of his journey. Duong leads them through his life. The collective flock become his supporters, so that when he reaches a difficult moment in his life, he has people who are there to listen, to empathize, and to connect with him. You'll see eventually that he stands up, and he goes on to map out his dreams for the future. Not just who, where, and how he is now, but who he wants to become. And isn't this, in some ways, what we all seek in life? To build that connection with another human being. To know that they're going to be there supporting us, listening, connecting with us, even through our wildest dreams. Now, for people with disabilities in Vietnam, this can be a particular challenge because of the stigma associated with people with disabilities, the lack of accessible infrastructure in Vietnam, as well as the physical distance between centers where people with disabilities live and the center of town. So for this reason, we wanted to bring our performance to the center of town where we'd be able to share Duong's story with a larger audience. But it turns out there was a few more obstacles in the way. We didn't have the proper permitting to perform in public, but just as we were overcoming that barrier and we were moving venues to perform at the US consulate itself, a tropical monsoon flash flood hits. And suddenly, I am in heels up to my ankles in water. The wheelchairs behind me are beginning to sink. And for the first time, I feel immobile. The rain just wouldn't stop. But neither would my team. And this was the real performance. Able-bodied team members began lifting our friends in wheelchairs onto their back and onto the bus one by one. They were determined to cross the street, now turned into a sea before us. And in this moment, the distance between us did not feel so great. And it was this connection that then allowed us to connect with our audience and move them as well. So as we were leaving the center at the end of our trip, Duong pulls me aside and he says, "Gaman," which means thank you. He says thank you because out of all of the people who have tried to come and help, he felt like we were the ones that really listened to him. And that it was this listening that allowed him to share his dreams with us. Dreams, he said, not even his family knew he had. Dreams that he has taken the steps to go on to fulfill today. And this is the most important thing you can take away from my time here. That because of our shared time together, Duong was able to take steps onward from the trauma of his past towards his dreams for the future. Movement can mobilize us to finding better solutions for problems that we face either in our personal lives or as a global community. And I don't mean to suggest that everyone leaves here today and starts mapping out their lives in the streets, though that could lead to some interesting interactions. I am suggesting, however, that shared movement and kinesthetic empathy are tools we can use to better understand those in our communities who we may have a harder time understanding, either due to language barriers or differences in ability. The best part is that you already have the tools. It's not just the metaphor of art and dance as pleasurably aesthetic things that reconcile. Rather, it is the attention that it takes to listen, to attune to our physical bodies and the memory, knowledge, and potential that they carry within them. Because the truth is, we often don't see the repercussions of our actions. But in the case of people affected by Agent Orange, we witness the long-term effects of chemical warfare every day. But perhaps here, today, through our collective performance, we can begin to create some common ground, resonating with one another, finding a frequency that is amplified by our co-presence that hopefully, years from now, will continue to ripple out and affect those around us. Thank you.